Hey there, Dr. Ashley Oxner. I want to discuss something today so important, especially to our young people, even now more and more adults, and that is the topic of allergies and asthma. These two conditions seemingly over the past 20 to 30 years especially, we've seen an increase in the incidence, severity, and just how common they've become. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, long time ago, the one kid in my class who had an inhaler. Seems as though, and data actually supports this, that more and more and more kids need to carry inhalers, get allergy shots, constantly dealing with issues with the upper respiratory tract. So I want to talk a little bit about that, especially these two conditions, because of the effect that they're having on us, and talk about solutions, some things that get overlooked, some possibilities that could exist to help you and or your child solve these problems at the root cause. So first, let's talk about allergies. Your immune system is obviously there for a reason. It's going to react to intruders. So what happens with allergies is your immune system is in a reaction to a trigger. All right, so keep that in mind, because when we come over here and we talk about asthma, there's also a reaction to a trigger. And while the reaction was different, we have histamine release when we talk about allergies and eyes watering, sneezing, and things of that nature. With asthma, there's just a different type of reaction to these triggers. And I want to show you just a quick illustration of that with this cup that I've cut a hole in here. And I want you to imagine that's the bronchial tube. So the lungs bring in oxygen, and then there's these little tubes that come through and they really feed into the lungs, and they're called bronchioles. So the bronchi and bronchioles are like I said, little hollow tubes, and as long as those are open and the smooth muscles around them aren't in spasm, we're going to have great air exchange and no issues whatsoever. However, when a trigger comes by, whatever that may be, whether it was environmental, allergy related, chemical in nature, etc., when this trigger happens, this is what starts to happen. So that literally that bronchiole gets in spasm. It will now produce, it will become inflamed. We now have a difficulty breathing. There's a lot of weight on the chest. And you can see just not as much air is going to flow through that. And then mucus can build because of that inflammatory response, because in there is mucus always, but now that there's less space for it, it clogs up. So we have this literal just vicious circle that's happening. So what we need to really think about is, because medically we do a reactive approach with the inhaler or a nebulizer or whatever it is under these attacks to then open the airway, right, to open it back up, or in an allergy sense to block the histamine response. What we need to really consider is, why can 7 kids react and adapt fine to those triggers, yet these 3 out of 10 are not, and they're having these reactions? So we need to look at what separates that. And what medicine typically points to is just simply environmental factors, genetic factors. That's the default answer. However, as a chiropractor and doctor of cause, DC, I want you to explore and consider the fact that the nervous system, which controls bronchial dilation and how big or small that those get, and those smooth muscles contracting or not, and controls immune system reaction, I want you to consider that maybe there's some interference to the nerve systems that cause these areas to function normally. So if you look at this diagram at the top, there's this blue nerve that goes all the way throughout the entire body. It's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve comes from the upper neck, and it supplies the lungs, the bronchioles. Very important in this concept of asthma and immune system. So what we've found is when the upper spine, this is just a simple model of spinal bones, but when the upper spine misaligns and puts pressure on a nerve or irritates the nerve, now the message that's trying to get from the brain to the body, or the target, so the message from the brain here trying to get to the lungs can't get there, so then it can't properly adapt to the trigger. So what we've found with hundreds and hundreds of children regionally here, and then when we talk about across the nation, hundreds of thousands, and across the world even more, that when we correct any of these imbalances in the spine that are irritating the nerves and we remove that interference, we get normal function, and then the body can adapt to these stressors normally, like it's supposed to, like it was designed. So that's just a little bit deeper dive into asthma and allergies so that you can understand the true root cause many times might be being missed, might be overlooked, so that you can address that in your life or your kid's life. We'd love the opportunity to evaluate you, see if this is something that could help you and your child get their life back so that asthma and allergies can be greatly diminished or be a thing of the past. Hope this was helpful. Take care.